morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I was here last year, and it's an encore and an honor. So before I get started, though, I'd like to recognize a couple of people. One of them is the gentleman who was the master organizer of this whole event, Mr. John Bynon, and he's worked tirelessly for months on this. And I'd also like to recognize Marilyn McCarty, who has put in countless and countless hours on the thousands of details in coordinating all this, and it's turned out very, very well. Thanks for all your hard work, guys. Global warming is the most pressing problem facing mankind today, and today we are going to be tackling this thing head on. But before I go any farther, it's useful for me to provide a little bit of context. Now, believe it or not, you heard John say it, I was a global warming skeptic. I mean, a 2 degree C temperature rise is only just over 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit is going to wreck the planet? Really? I mean, this did not seem credible to me. I mean, temperatures can vary 40 to 60 degrees in a single day. What's another 3.5 degrees going to be? Intuitively, that was not reasonable. So that was my posture on the whole thing for a long time, and that's where I left it for many years. When I first began to suspect that this global warming thing just might have some merit to it, I chose to not rely on somebody else's word for it. So I leaned on my engineering fundamentals, went back to first principles, and did my own calculations. What I found is that the public is grossly misinformed about not only the severity and the immediacy of the global warming problem, they are equally misinformed about the fact that we have all the technology we need right now to fix it. I'll be discussing this in 3 separate segments today. In this first segment, I'll talk about just how severe and imminent the global warming problem is. In the second segment, which I'll present at 12:10 this afternoon, I'll address the solutions we have available right now to conquer this thing. And finally, in the third segment at 3:10, I'll share with you the actions we need to take today to help turn the tide on the global warming problem. Now, global warming is being caused by the continuing buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, most notably CO2, or carbon dioxide. Now, this causes more and more of the sun's incoming energy to be trapped on the Earth's surface. And the more of these gases are in the atmosphere, the warmer it gets. Now, because of this continuing buildup of CO2 in the air, 82% of the volume of the Arctic ice cap has disappeared since 1979. As such, we're fast approaching an ice-free Arctic, a situation I call the point of no return, which we could encounter in the next 10 years or so, maybe even as early as 2025. Now, there are trillions of tons of methane that are sequestered in the Arctic, both on frozen land and under the very shallow Arctic Ocean. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, and although the amount of methane in the air is much, much smaller than the amount of carbon dioxide, the heating effect of 1 ton of methane is equivalent to the heating effect of nearly 200 tons of carbon dioxide. Now, as this Arctic thaws, this methane becomes airborne. Even if a fraction of a percent of the sequestered methane in the Arctic becomes airborne, we will unleash a methane-driven, runaway global warming sequence. It will be self-reinforcing, meaning that with the increasing temperature, you get more airborne methane, which leads to increasing temperature, which leads to more airborne methane, and on it goes. And once started, we will be unable to shut it off. It will continue until it runs out of enough methane to keep it going, and a new, much higher equilibrium temperature is reached. This is why I call an ice-free Arctic the point of no return, because there's no coming back once we cross that threshold. We will be unable to fix it. See, reducing or stopping CO2 emissions after we cross the point of no return will be of no value. It won't do us any good. If we cross the point of no return, global warming will accelerate. The warming we currently see in a year will be occurring every 12 days, and the warming we've seen in an entire generation will be occurring every 12 months. And as this irreversible warming process proceeds, we can look forward to severe drought, depleted aquifers, severe storms and flooding, rising oceans, and drowned cities. Now, the media focuses on rising oceans and more severe storms. Well, these will affect some more than others, some not at all, but these can take generations sometimes to have an appreciable effect. The real and immediate killer, however, will be rapidly rising temperatures. The runaway global warming sequence will cause the planet's surface temperature to rise another 22 degrees Fahrenheit by the middle of the next century. It will be hotter than it's been in 40 million years. Even the Antarctic was temperate and hot enough for dinosaurs to thrive. So if we don't change course soon, by the middle of the next century, peak summer temperatures in much of the US will be between 125 and 144 degrees, even over 150 in some places. Here are some examples. Phoenix, Arizona, 144 degrees. Los Angeles, 135. Dallas, Texas, 135. Omaha, Nebraska, 129. New York City, 128. And way up north in Madison, Wisconsin, 126. In this kind of environment, what's going to happen to all the surface water? It's going to evaporate. What's going to happen to all the crops that grow during the summertime? They're going to fry. Look at a meat thermometer. Meat is cooked at 140 degrees. What happens to a small child or a pet locked in a car on a hot summer day? They're dead in a couple of hours. Year after year after year, because once we set this up, most of the planet will be largely uninhabitable by the middle of the next century. 90% of the world's population will die, and it will stay that way for tens of thousands of years or longer. See, it's not the 2 degrees C temperature rise that's going to wreck the planet. It's what gets unleashed by that 2 degrees that will wreck the planet. Global warming, if we don't fix it soon, is a game ender. Now we might think, it's a long way off. It won't affect me, so I don't care. Look into your children's or grandchildren's eyes and tell them that to their face. With current medical and health advances that are underway, scientists are telling us that those being born today could still be alive have lifetimes of 135 years or more, and still be alive in 2150. So the people who will experience the end of mankind as we know it are the infants, toddlers, and preschoolers who are in our midst right now. If we don't stop the global warming problem now, we are looking into the faces of the last generation of human beings on this planet. I have 2 grandchildren. As I realized the future we are currently creating for them, I became terrified of what they will experience if we don't get off this fossil fuel track right now. So that's the urgency of this global warming problem. In the next segment, we will look at how we can actually fix this thing with technology we've got today and avoid this planetary disaster. Are there any questions? God, I explained it all very well.
I think somebody should find a question. We've had this rare opportunity to have Craig here. Okay. Come. I see a lot of people out here.
Going once, going twice.
I guess my question to you, Craig, would be, do you think that the scientific information is coming in that is correct?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's more severe than what has been believed. The modeling that was done for quite a number of years as far as predicting what's going to be happening to the climate was based solely on additional carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They found that because the Arctic is thawing so quickly that the methane component, which has not been included in the computational models, is actually more severe than what they have expected, and what they're doing at the IPCC is incorporating the effect of methane, and they're finding that the results are much more close at hand than what they thought.
Okay, that's what, Mary.
If you could choose one single thing that an individual could do to make a difference, what would you suggest?
Well, I'll talk about that specifically on my third part, but get a hydrogen car.
Okay, get a hydrogen car.
if you're not ready to give up your current vehicle or you can't afford it, I mean, of course, I guess you could walk or bike, but what's maybe the next or another alternative?
Well, it really comes down to what people can incorporate into their own life most easily. And there's a lot of great stuff here, and they're all important. It really comes down to what's your personal take on what to do next. Yeah.
So carbon dioxide is the #1 cause of global warming?
It is the cause. The problem that there are 14 known climate drivers, as I call them. They've got effect. They have time frames of anywhere from a few days, like in cosmic rays, all the way up to hundreds of millions of years, such as galactic rotation, and there's a whole gradation in between. The only one of those 14 that can create the kinds of changes in our climate in the time frame we're seeing is the greenhouse effect. And we know that the increases in temperatures are being driven by the increasing amount of carbon dioxide. I mean, that's just like dumbbell obvious.
So every time I breathe out, I cause global warming.
Yeah, well, when you breathe in, you fix it.
Spot on.
Planting more trees, okay. Anybody else has a question here?
One of the objectives of some companies like Apple is to completely recycle every piece of plastic, with the ultimate objective to be to reduce their landfill deposits to zero.
Right.
Is there some type of a corporate initiative to try to get more companies to do this and prevent garbage being put in landfills, or some type of corporate reward for that?
I don't know if they're of an overarching type of framework like you're wondering about. What I do know is that companies that are forward-looking and are sensitive to the environment, all the way from manufacturers of zero-emission vehicles to solar panels to computer parts and things like that, they think in terms of how can we reuse all this and minimize our impact on the planet. So it's a trend that's taking root, and I see it just continuing to go that way.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who has a question?
Right there.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
Are there any promising technologies for removing CO2 from the atmosphere?
They've been working on that since the 90s. The technologies that exist, I mean, they're out there. They're still so expensive that they're almost impossible to do. I mean, it's technically possible, but in fact, when I was writing my book, one of the things that I looked at was that very question, and the cost of removing the man-made additional carbon dioxide from the atmosphere would cost the average family $1,000 a month. So it's a little pricey.
Okay, so it's better to die than to spend the money?
Well, let's spend the money. Let's do it.
All right,
Any
thank
more
you.
questions?
Okay.
One more question? All right.
All right.
If there are no more questions, let's thank you, Craig. That was really a very frightening
you.
speech, but thank you very much. We'll hang around to hear how we get out of this mess.
We'll fix it.
So, okay. Thanks a lot, Craig.